Tom Brady is back rejoining the Buccaneers at practice this week, and we have a quarterback trade in the NFL, along with tons of other news and notes from week 2 of preseason football coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson here with you, as always, at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL on Twitter. Get those questions in for tomorrow's Twitter Tuesday episode. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And Matt, we've got a lot of news this week, and we're going to review many of the games, not really notes on every single one of the games. Some of them more interesting than others. Unfortunately, a lot of the news that happens is more injury and off the field type of stuff at this portion of the offseason and preseason, instead of actual really interesting things that happen on the field. There were some happenings on the field that we'll also cover from week 2's preseason games. But the number one story this past week with Tom Brady just kind of absent, and nobody knows why, from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it's about an 11-day absence, and now he's back as of Monday, back on the practice field. About the moment we are at right now, I think Tom Brady will be hitting the field and practicing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So he's back, and we still don't know exactly why. We're hearing something about maybe the Bahamas. I don't know if the Masked Singer
I love that. Yeah.
is still anywhere in reality, but Tom Brady's coming back, and I assume he's probably going to have a pretty darn good season. But an odd time to take time off from the NFL. Might be the first time in history someone went on vacation, if indeed he went to the Bahamas for a week right in the middle of the preseason.
It's totally bizarre to me, especially considering his dedication and who he is. It must have been something big. He deserves every benefit of the doubt, even if it's the Masked Singer, which is pretty funny. My hunch is tomorrow when we record, we'll probably have a pretty good idea of what it was. I would imagine he doesn't skip a beat, but who knows? That's a long time away. I bet he's kind of losing his mind a little bit.
If there was a week, it was a good week because he wasn't going to play. Most of the ones didn't play. Leonard Fournette did get a little bit of action here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 2 of the preseason, but it was Kyle Trask at quarterback. They're trying to get the second-year quarterback ready to be a long-term backup. I don't know if he's ever going to be a starter for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I guess the same could be said for the quarterback on the other side, Malik Willis, too. So it was Willis versus Trask in this one, and man, in the third round where they got Malik Willis, I understand not wanting to spend a first-round pick on Malik Willis, but the talent is there. You watch him play. 7 of 17 for 80 yards and a touchdown. It does sack 3 times. It doesn't look amazing. He did carry the ball 5 more times, was the Titans' leading rusher with 42 yards. But there's something there talent-wise, and he's even gotten better from week 1 to week 2 because I haven't seen a lot of training camp practices or anything with Malik Willis, so I'm judging by what I've seen with him in a Titans uniform in 2 weeks of preseason football, and the numbers aren't great, but it looked like he got better, and he's making some plays on the run. He's got talent. I mean, for a third-round pick, I like Malik Willis's future, and if he doesn't hit, it's totally worth swinging for the fences on a third-rounder.
Yeah, I'm not predicting he's going to be a starter or a star or anything like that, but I really did like him coming out of school. And I do think that the league might be kicking themselves already for letting him slide as far as they did, just because we know what plays at the NFL level now. I mean, there's been a lot of these raw, super talented, athletic guys that come into the league and keep their head above water with their physical traits until they learn things. And, I was told he's a year away from being a year away. That's fine, but he makes plays. I mean, not every quarterback out there can say, boy, I'm out there making plays. I mean, I'd rather have him than Trask.
I clearly would as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
and it was it took less draft capital to get Willis than it did Trask.
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching the backup running back situation with the Tennessee Titans. Who's that handcuff for Derrick Henry in your fantasy football leagues? And it's pretty clearly going to be Dontrell Hilliard, who is running back 2. And then you've got 2 rookies, Julius Chestnut and Hassan Haskins. Hassan Haskins, who they drafted, I believe, in round 4. And those guys both look pretty good, and I think they're going to be solid running back 3s and maybe have an opportunity to be the RB2 to to Derrick Henry this year, but it's a fun little matchup going on there. But clearly, Dontrell Hilliard is RB2 for the Tennessee Titans. So if you're looking for a handcuff for Henry, that's the guy.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be more of a complement to Henry. Pull Henry out occasionally on passing downs. But I wonder if Henry were to go down, would Hilliard be a true handcuff, or would one of those two hammer types that you mentioned factor in as well and kind of cloud things? And I guess while we're talking about that situation, Tampa, Keyshawn Vaughn, who's been kind of out of sight, out of mind, looks like he's pushing pretty hard for the 2 spot, not the kid that they drafted.
Yeah, Rachaad White had 6 carries for 19 yards. Keyshawn Vaughn, maybe they're just giving him one last long look, or maybe putting him out there for other teams that might need a running back. But 10 carries for 54 yards, had the best statistical line of the Tampa Bay running backs in that one. Keyshawn Vaughn, almost forgot about him. He was a high pick, 3rd round pick.
Wasn't that long ago, and now he's like out of sight, out of mind. He was a super high dynasty rookie pick, and Ryan and I kind of laughed at it, like, you guys are getting way ahead of yourself on this.
Yeah, I mean, a similar thing happened with the next team we're going to talk about in the 49ers and Vikings. And the first note with that game that I want to mention is we have a trade. We have a quarterback trade. No, it's not Jimmy Garoppolo. It is actually the Minnesota Vikings that have added Nick Mullens from the Las Vegas Raiders for a conditional future 7th round pick. It's basically the least amount you can trade for an NFL player is a 7th round pick from not the upcoming draft, but the one after, a 2024 7th rounder that is also conditional. So if Mullens gets cut before the season even starts, then it's actually nothing. Then they didn't get nothing. Yeah. So it's either nothing or a conditional next year's 7th round pick for Mullens. But to me, the takeaway, and this was my takeaway already just watching this game and knowing how much the coaching staff didn't really care for Kellen Mond last year. He was bad. I mean, he's awful. And you're throwing a really bad interception in this game, was 2nd interception of the game. And then they go and sign someone like Nick Mullens, who's, played in a similar scheme before, that might know the terminology. I feel like Mannion and Mond both aren't great fits for what O'Donnell's doing there, the new head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, who comes over from the Los Angeles Rams. And I think Nick Mullens is at least a nice fit and someone that they know can be a capable backup. And especially it might spell the beginning of the end for Kellen Mond in Minnesota, because it just has not gone well.
Yeah, I think that's the clear takeaway. I mean, you're obviously very familiar with Mullens from the Niner days, but he's about as boring as they come. I mean, he's a number 2 at best, but he's dependable and knows what he's doing, which tells me Mond probably isn't, So this is not a good sign at all for Mond.
Ty Chandler looking pretty good. I think
like him. Yeah.
His line wasn't amazing. The 5th round draft pick for the Minnesota Vikings. He's similar to what we just talked about with some depth, and he's not the 1, he's not the 2. He's behind Alexander Madison probably, but there's something to him. Maybe a deep stash for you in your fantasy leagues. Kene and Nwangwu, they've got a lot of running backs there in Minnesota right now, but Ty Chandler, I was impressed with him a little bit. On the other side at running back, the 49ers, you always want a Shanahan running back on your fantasy teams, and this is one that we've been watching a lot. And similar to what we talked about with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Trey Sermon, the 3rd rounder from last year, never got it going as a rookie, and man, looks like the worst of the bunch this year too. I don't know if Trey Sermon's going to make the team. He started this game. So with Jeff Wilson out and Elijah Mitchell both sitting, because the 49ers and the Vikings both sat 27 guys. Neither one of them started any. A couple starters are out there, but that's about it.
Very few.
Trey Sermon got first crack as if he's going to be running back 3 for this team. And 1.6 yards per carry just doesn't look like he has a lot of vision. And the undrafted rookie, Jordan Mason out of Georgia Tech, looked better. Ty Davis-Price, the 3rd rounder, they went back-to-back 3rd round picks at running back. He looks better. He looks like more of the guy they thought they were getting in Trey Sermon, a bigger-bodied running back. JaMychal Hasty averaged 5 yards a carry in this one. He's the better receiving back. So I have no idea what's going to go on here. Still, might go down to the 3rd preseason game if you're trying to figure out the pecking order of running backs behind Elijah Mitchell with the 49ers.
As all of us fantasy people are, my take on it was Davis-Price gets a little boost then. I know predicting that backfield, as you know, is always difficult, and it's very fleeting.
Yeah. The funny thing is Ty Davis-Price was, if you count Mitchell and then Wilson, who didn't play, and I think they're 1-2, and then Sermon's running back 3, and then Jermichael Hasty came in before Tyrion Davis-Price.
Oh, did he?
TDP is like running back 5 currently on the depth
wow.
chart. And I think he's going to play a bigger role than that, especially if they do something with Sermon. Maybe there's a trade coming or something like that, or maybe if they cut the 3rd rounder already. But, man, Jordan Mason, the undrafted rookie, looked better than all of them. He looked better than Ty Davis-Price. He runs hard. He's got vision. So I was impressed there. But you know what can happen? Late second half of a game that starters didn't even play. You're playing against guys who aren't going to make it in the NFL, so you don't want to get too excited when you see some of those things. So that's what makes it difficult. So I think it's going to go a little bit more down to the wire, but clearly the 49ers can't keep all those guys.
Yeah, and it always seems like the case with them, but I'm not going to go boosting Ty Davis-Price up my ranks. So I'm just going to stay away from that one, I think.
17-7, the final score that we probably don't care much about in that one, 49ers and Vikings. Okay, next we will talk Panthers, Patriots.
All right.
Texans and Rams. An unfortunate injury there. It looks like their top rookie for the Los Angeles Rams will be lost for the year. Tons more news and notes from preseason week number 2 coming up. But first, let's talk about betonline.net, the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. How about this? Williamson's guy, George Pickens, 2nd-round wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He now has the highest odds for being rookie of the year with the offseason and the preseason that he's having. More on that Steelers game in a bit. Breece Hall, he's 6-1. Breece Hall, 9-1. Kenny Pickett, another Steeler, 9-1. Chris Olave, Sky Moore, 10-1 odds for rookie of the year, 12-1 for Dameon Pierce. Some of those names are really climbing up the list with the preseasons they're having at BetOnline. If you want to get involved in some NFL betting, there are tons of odds already for the 2022 NFL season. Find reviews and news on every league, including Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, golf, live in-game betting, and BetOnline continues to be not only the top online resource for wagering, but for news and information as well. So get to BetOnline today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening there at BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day. It's Fantasy Draft Week on the Locked On Podcast Network. However you play. Experts from Locked On Fantasy Football, Locked On Dynasty Football, Matt Williamson included, will bring you daily positional top 10 lists to get you ready for the season. Find Locked On Fantasy Football and Locked On Dynasty Football on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Carolina Panthers at New England Patriots, 2010 Patriots in this one. And some unfortunate injury news here. And rookie quarterback Matt Corral looks like he's going to lose out on his rookie season. He got injured, and it's unfortunate, but other quarterback news in this game, Baker Mayfield has been named the starter, which is probably the least surprising news out of the entire weekend, Matt.
Yeah, named a starter, and him and Darnold didn't even play, so it was PJ Walker starting, Corral finishing up, who then got hurt. Zappy, the rookie quarterback on the other side, played quite a bit as well. Mostly good, but some bad. And then another rookie that stood out to me in a negative way, which I hated to see, was Ikwonu, the first overall pick or first pick from the Panthers. He had a tough day, and that one was not, all that rosy for me.
And unfortunately, a ton of injury news this week, and another rookie on the Patriots side, Tyquan Thornton.
Oh, right.
It's that was
broke his collarbone.
Collarbone, yes, broken collarbone. Which those things can kind of linger and take a while, and you think you're back, and you don't want to come back too soon because it can break again, even if you feel like you're 100%. So they're saying 8 weeks, so he's going to miss a quarter of the season, and probably more. Maybe that could be half of your rookie season just about for Tyquan Thornton. And one thing that is clear, and we already knew he had track speed, but it's one thing I've liked about him. I thought he was drafted too high in the 2nd round by the Patriots, but he's got game speed too. Like and it plays.
They take shots
plays on the field. Mm-hmm.
And I don't like their receiving core, including their tight ends, all their pass catchers, but they have a nice variety of styles. He's a lot different than Myers or Parker, their tight ends. So he complimented them that way, and truly a take the top off type of guy.
And Mac Jones isn't a cannon-armed quarterback, but he throws a pretty deep ball. So I thought that was a really nice connection for the Patriots. So we'll have to wait a little while longer to see that one in the regular season.
One other nugget, and now there's some hope that it's just Harris and Ramondre Stevenson flat out sharing the backfield and not three other guys like it always is. Although Ty Montgomery in such a Ty Montgomery manner is still looming a little bit.
Yeah, he's still there, and he could get that
Right.
passing down work. Ramondre Stevenson and Harris, they both, I think, catch the ball a little bit. But yeah, it could start to creep into a 4 running back situation pretty quickly because they have the rookie Pierre Strong there as well. But
what we want is Stevenson to be the passing down guy and a rotational early down guy. Now you're talking.
Yeah, that's what the fantasy community wants,
Right.
And then to become RB1 next year with Pierre Strong, the change up speed guy after him.
Right.
After Harris leaves in free agency.
But of course, it won't go that way.
Yeah, exactly. Find more of that on Locked On Dynasty Football featuring Matt Williamson. Okay. Bad news for Los Angeles, the Rams. They lost to the Houston Texans 24-20. That's not the bad news. They lost their top draft pick, which was a third rounder. They didn't pick until the third round. Logan Bruss, the guard, has a torn ACL and MCL. So his rookie season is over. And they needed him to come in and compete and play early.
Yeah, they did. And not that he was a superstar, but he's a very typical early to mid round guard Rams type of pick that ends up being a 4-year starter. And then he leaves and they get a comp pick for him. And then they do it again and do it again. So they're a little thin there. I mean, that would worry me for sure. I mean, that line, just looking at it on paper, is not impressive. I'm sure they'll make it work. 2 other rookie news on the other side. It sure looks like Dameon Pierce is the clear starter now. They held him out of this game as if he were, a star type of guy, not wanting to give him the carries. And then I was watching it, and I paid a lot of attention to Derek Stingley when the Rams had the ball, who of course didn't play any of their starters. And I just felt like I was in his head, like watching him line up and cover these guys and then play cover 2 or pass them off. And he'd kind of like look around like he wasn't super comfortable in zone. And I'm just getting in his head going, Coach, let me just lock this dude down and play man coverage, So that's an interesting fit.
Yeah, good notes on both of those guys. And if anybody's wondering, Dameon Pierce is RB1 for the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
And they're treating him as such. So that sort of like, puts a pin in that one. But you drafted a corner, number 3 overall, that has Stingley's skill set. You drafted him to be a man coverage corner.
Right.
And if you're going to be playing him in like cover 2 zone, that doesn't benefit anybody. What are you doing? It's like, it's sort of like a complete, I don't want to say miscommunication, but just the GM's drafting for one thing and the coach is coaching something else.
It makes me wonder if Lovey's really just there for 1 year, and I'm sure they'll play more man coverage in the regular season. And Lovey, as defensive coordinator, played more man last year than he usually does, but it's still an odd fit. And it makes me think they have a big picture situation in mind here.
Right. And we know Lovey's history, with the cover 2 scheme, but it's also maybe a situation where like, we already know he can man up. So let's work on the other thing.
Maybe
also going to do sometimes. So it is the preseason. That would be the time to practice these things.
Right. He just looks like he's frustrated or not doing what he should be doing out there.
You would absolutely hope that doesn't continue a ton.
Right.
Moving on
next year.
Right. Yeah. Moving on to an absolute blowout here. The Buffalo Bills are ready to go. They are ready to go. Put everybody in bubble wrap. 42-15 Buffalo Bills beat the Denver Broncos. The only problem is the Buffalo Bills cared about this game, and apparently the Denver Broncos did not.
And it sure showed. I mean, Bills fans were loving it. Josh Allen made a tremendous play. He actually played 2 series, I think. Stephon Diggs stayed in, not late into the game, but long enough for Keenum to play. The O-line was dominant, Davis, Diggs, and it was not even close to a competitive outing. The Bills just blew their doors off in all facets.
And this is an interesting one because there was 4 preseason games for so long. Every team had kind of copycatted each other, and everyone had the same exact program. Not very many people play in week 1 of the preseason. Maybe you play a quarter in week 2. Week 3 is the dress rehearsal. You play your starters for a full half or something like that. Then week 4, nobody plays. And it's the guys 53 through 90 that battle for the last spots on the roster. And you get ready and you go into the regular season. But now with 3 preseason games, they cut off the 4th game. So different teams are doing it differently. And clearly a team like the Broncos is looking at it like week 3 is still the dress rehearsal. And the Bills are looking at it like, well, we just cut off the first week of the old preseason. Now week 2 is the dress rehearsal, and maybe week 3 we won't play everybody. So that's something that's interesting because everyone's playing it differently. So you're going to get outcomes like this. And I don't know if it necessarily helps the Bills to just beat up on the Broncos 2 twos and threes.
Yeah, I don't know. And I'll be honest, I meant to start the show by saying I expected many more teams to treat this past week like the dress rehearsal, and we didn't. And not to give you a hard time, but I mean, I don't know if Denver and these other teams will even use week 3 as a dress rehearsal, or is it just get to the starting line? I don't know. I don't. There's not enough precedent in the league to know how this is going to go.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see how it goes. I know some teams are. The 49ers are treating next week like the dress rehearsal.
Okay,
and it's partially because they had so many games in a short stretch, and so we'll see how many teams actually do it that way. But yeah, it is definitely something to note and follow, especially context needed. You get players showing up great. Every fan base has probably got one guy on their team that they love that has looked amazing in the fourth quarter, but who's the competition you're playing against, and they might be surprised when those players still get cut. Looking at one note here from the Buffalo Bills backfield, though, especially from a fantasy perspective, Devin Singletary is clearly the number one back there still.
Yes.
And James Cook looks good in some of those outside zone runs. He looks athletic. He's going to be a pass catcher out of the backfield. But I still am not sure about his early down usage. And clearly, since Devin Singletary is going to be the running back one, it's going to be a 1-2 punch there, it looks like, with Zach Moss falling a little bit behind in his usage. And
except Moss comes in at the goal line and steals the touchdowns.
Yeah, so maybe you don't want
or Allen's going to. You're right.
If you're in a PPR league, maybe you draft Cooks and hope, but he's going, I think, a little bit too high for me in a lot of these leagues. Maybe it's a backfield you still want to avoid like you did last year.
Right. I mean, you hate to avoid a backfield from maybe the best offense in the league, but they kind of all cancel each other out. But I think you're right. Singletary is the one, and that in itself has a lot of value.
And the passing down work, if they're going to throw the ball a lot, and someone who's dynamic and can make plays after the catch, like James Cook, even if he doesn't get first or second down work, could be useful. He's going so high too. So
he is.
Next, we will talk Commanders and Chiefs. Both of them had their starters. Some takeaways from that game. Matt's insight on his Pittsburgh Steelers. Starters playing there with the Steelers and Jaguars. A couple of rookies to note in that game. We've got Bengals, Giants, and Ravens, Cardinals. Some notes on those games coming up. But if you're hanging out with your buddies, as we all do, maybe watching some football over the weekend, maybe you are just cutting loose a little bit after work on a Friday evening. A few becomes a few too many as the evening comes to an end, putting back a few drinks and people start to head out. You think, maybe I'll just call for a ride. That was the plan, right? Let's be smart about this. And then you have a few drinks and you think, I live close by. I'll get home. It'll be okay. It'll be totally fine. Let's just drive. What are the odds? You'll get pulled over anyway. Maybe you can talk yourself out of it. If you do, what, insurance goes up, pay a little fine. Maybe you lose your license. Maybe you lose your job. Maybe you total your car. Maybe you kill somebody. It can get serious really quickly. Everyone knows the risks about drunk driving. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Okay, Matt. Moving on to the Washington Commanders at Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs winning this one 24-14. We saw Carson Wentz out there with the ones. We saw Patrick Mahomes out there with the ones for Kansas City, and clearly Kansas City's ones looked better than the Commanders' ones, and then I turned the game off after that.
Yeah, Mahomes missed a throw or two early, and then he was lighting it up, kind of like I was talking about with Allen. They were moving the ball easily, and Mahomes looked like Mahomes. Other Chiefs note was Juju didn't play. Sky Moore might be a little more buried in the depth chart than we thought, but
that was a big one for me. I was like, who's Justin Watson?
I'd say he's lighting it up. That's the next name I was going to mention. This guy's
why is he playing right now? First of all, where's Sky Moore? And is this really going to continue into the regular season?
Yeah, I bet not. I mean, I keep hearing big things about Juju there, but we'll see. I mean, there is opportunity for sure. The first-round pick, Karlaftis, made some plays. He's had some good buzz around him. And then Wentz didn't do anything wrong. He just didn't really play particularly aggressive. But McLaurin made some plays. Dotson made some plays. And Brian Robinson might be the top back there, but that's another messy one.
Another messy backfield, but clearly the running back to own that you should be targeting that you might be able to get late is Brian Robinson. We mentioned James Cook. James Cook's going higher in fantasy drafts than Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson actually might be a clear number one running back for the Washington Commanders soon as week one. I mean, because the way that they're using Antonio Gibson right now is as an afterthought on offense and, a return man.
Yeah, kind of gadgety type dude too. And he made a play or two as well, but his role is not very clear.
So we're seeing why they drafted Brian Robinson so high in the 2022 NFL draft for the Washington Commanders. How about your Pittsburgh Steelers? Rookie of the year? Wide receiver for George Pickens, rookie of the year. 16-15 win of the Steelers over the Jacksonville Jaguars, by the way. But how are the rookies looking? Because when I watched Kenny Pickett play, he looks really comfortable out there, but he hadn't, the reports weren't glowing out of camp for him. Is he sort of a gamer that looks better in games than he does in practice?
Without question. And real quick on Pickens, on my other show that I do for Steelers.com, we've been telling people it used to be plus 3,500 for Pickens. So if you listen to the drive with Dale and Matt, you should be checking that. You should be very happy that you put a bet down at those numbers. I wouldn't be touching it now. He would not be my leader in the clubhouse, but it's a pretty easy year to have a non-quarterback in the mix, which brings me to Pickett. Trubisky's a starter, but Pickett has played extremely well in both preseason games. And every practice is better than the last. I mean, the early practices, he looked very, very much like a rookie with him being a Pitt guy. And, I mean, trust me, this whole town thinks he's a combination of Bradshaw and Roethlisberger without any of the negatives. But he's been very good. I think he played 9 snaps in this game. But he ran a great 2-minute drill and played extremely well. Steelers' O-line is an utter disaster, but the rest of the offense looks very, very good. Deontay, Freiermuth, all those dudes, Pickens. But Jacksonville's defensive front, as we've talked about a lot, I always go back to when we had Locked On Jags on here talking, and he talked about that building that front seven to deal with Taylor and Henry. And boy, they are a physical, good group. Allen played extremely well. Walker showed up, all those linebackers. And I thought Lawrence kind of looked like a star in the making. He was really smart with the football, read blitzes and threw right in the voids. Layered footballs really well. I mean, so there's something to build on with Jacksonville, and I would not hesitate to draft Christian Kirk pretty early in fantasy as well.
Yeah, they paid him a lot to be
he's their number
quarterback's wide receiver one and sort of be that safety blanket for him. And it's a huge year for Trevor Lawrence. And by all accounts, he's looking like he's going to make good on that in year 2 of his NFL career. Quick note here, looking at Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, this from Warren Sharp. Just the style of those two quarterbacks has been pretty stark in these 2 preseason games. Kenny Pickett is looking like he's going to play more of a Roethlisberger style game, because we had talked about how Roethlisberger's depth of target had just fallen off a cliff at the end of his career. So far, of 72 preseason quarterbacks through the 2 preseason games in the NFL, Kenny Pickett's time to throw is number 2 in the league, 2.3 seconds. That's Drew Brees-like, and you don't see that often from a rookie getting the ball out quick. So that's important. But air yards is 65 out of 72. So he's throwing the ball quick, but he's throwing it short, 5.4 yards per attempt. Whereas Trubisky is the exact opposite. He's number 2 in air yards per attempt at 12 air yards, and number 67 at time to throw at 3.1 seconds, which is something that he was bad at before with the Chicago Bears. So
very interesting.
That's it's pretty fascinating how opposite those 2 quarterbacks have been for the Steelers.
And I can expand on that, because a lot of throws, especially in this last game that Trubisky made, the O-line's so bad right now. Play breaks down, Trubisky buys time, runs around behind the line of scrimmage a little bit, lets football go. So I don't think that's by design with Trubisky. He's just a pretty good athlete that's making plays in second reaction situation. I wrote like a 2,000-word article after the Steelers drafted Pickett saying my number one concern with him, especially, and not even comparing him to Ben, was of all the top quarterbacks, his average time to throw as a college player was the highest. He was able to kind of pat the ball at Pitt. And in practice, every time I'd be critical of him was, Kenny, you're holding it too long. Or Tomlin's yelling at him all the time. Get it out. In practice. And in games, he is getting it out. And that is the biggest hurdle that he's, in the process of jumping over, and was my biggest worry as he transitioned.
Yeah, oftentimes the biggest hurdle for most young quarterbacks.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's
Zach
good to see.
Wilson, and right.
Good to see quick development. And he is supposed to be, that was the thing. He was supposed to be the guy who's ready to play maybe somewhat early in his career. So maybe
Showing up.
Competition? No, it's still all Trubisky. No Pickett.
I'm going to answer so many of those questions, starting with the Steeler post-game show last Saturday night. Trubisky's a starter. Pickett's very promising. Trubisky and Pickett played a combined 22 snaps in that game. Let's not get too crazy,
Right. And let's wait to see what happens for a couple of weeks. You go 0-2, Trubisky, that timeline might accelerate a little bit.
No doubt. And they're very happy with Trubisky. That's the thing is, I think they're happy with both. And Rudolph played okay too.
Cincinnati Bengals at New York Giants, 25-22 Giants win this one. We saw no Joe Burrow, which we're not going to see in the preseason. We did see some of Daniel Jones in this one, and his line looked good. 14 of 16 passing, 116 yards to throw an interception. But with this game, there was, I want to go actually to Wan'Dale Robinson, the rookie, because he was like 3 catches for -3 yards. And he was already someone who looked like he was going to be a gadgety type of player in the NFL. They drafted him really high, ahead of George Pickens, by the way, the New York Giants. Right. And it's like, I didn't see it, especially for a gadgety player. And right now, the gadgety stuff doesn't look like he doesn't look like a special gadgety player that you would have to draft so high. And I don't know if his wide receiver usage is going to be important enough for him to be, for him to have been drafted that high and be an impact player as a rookie. So kind of stock down on Wan'Dale Robinson for me.
It kind of smells like Andy Isabella going before DK Metcalf,
exactly what it smells like. Darius Toney, who could do a lot of those things. So,
he is the special gadget guy.
So, and he is special, yes, but more special talent, I think, physically. Maybe there's something else they didn't like about him, obviously, if they were going to try to trade him this offseason, if those rumors were true. But, questionable there with that New York Giants receiving group. And, everything's questionable at quarterback with Daniel Jones going into a pivotal year for his career.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't think Jones played bad. I watched a lot of this one. He did throw a pick that I don't know if it was even his fault to Daxton Hill, who was really the only, Bengal guy I cared about. They sat just about everybody. And sticking with the first round theme, Kayvon Thibodeau, the play was either a fullback or a tight end was pulling straight at him, and they went low at the last minute and just buckled his knee. And I thought, oh no, the rookies.
Yeah, and I don't know the MRI results or anything like that, but he said he's good, and apparently they dodged a bullet there with Kayvon Thibodeau. Did you think it was a dirty hit, or he's just trying guys?
No.
Guys get cut all the time in the NFL, and I've seen some ex-NFL players on social media saying it's not dirty. You got to protect yourself, and in fact, they're trying to get you to hit lower. But yeah,
I mean, it went right for the knee, and it was I don't remember who blocked, but it was later in the game. And since he didn't have their stars in to start with, so I'm sure it's some kid just trying to make the team and doing exactly what he's coached. I don't think it's dirty. And Thibodeau could have protected himself better. But I also think that if it was ones versus ones, it'd probably be an unwritten code to not go at my knee,
in the preseason.
Right.
Yeah. And it was just awkward too, because he had his foot planted instead of, protecting himself against a cut block like that. Last one here, Ravens 24, Arizona Cardinals 17. On the Ravens side, not a lot of ones in there for them, but man, Isaiah Likely, the rookie tight end, this draft looks like it could be pretty darn amazing for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, right.
Likely looks like he'd be a starting NFL tight end. 8 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. He just gets open, pure hands. His athletic testing was awful, but his film was great. And I think this is one of those lessons where it's like, okay, don't change your grade. If he's a great player, he's a great player. Like, he's a football player. He's not a track athlete.
No, and the smaller school didn't probably help him either. But to your point, I was about to say, I would have bet my bottom dollar the day before the combine that this guy was going on day 2, second or even third round at the latest. And he didn't look slow or unathletic on tape in college at all. And then didn't have a good combine, and he's a small school guy, and he's not a blocker, but so what? No one's a blocker or tight end anymore. And the Ravens will turn him into a player. I have no doubt in my mind. Him and Huntley were connecting well, but it seemed to me like the biggest storyline was they keep showing Kyler and they keep showing Lamar, contract.
Oh, contract is a huge one that's going to keep on going. And Tyler Huntley had a really good. Tyler Huntley's making himself, speaking of contracts, some future money as a backup, maybe stopgap type starter somewhere.
Yeah,
like he's putting some good film out there.
Every time he goes to the field, he plays well.
Yeah, likely the 4th rounder, the 3rd rounder, Travis Jones. He did get a little dinged up. I don't think week 1 is in doubt, but he's getting shut down for the rest of the preseason, according to John Harbaugh. And he's been awesome in the 3rd round. They had 2 first-round picks, so it looks like an awesome rookie class for the Baltimore Ravens. You mentioned Kyler Murray. That was the big story for me when the Cardinals had the ball on offense. Is Kyler Murray calling plays? And Cliff Kingsbury had a quote, and I don't have the quote in front of me, but basically he was like, this crap's hard. So I just wanted to prove to my young quarterback how hard it is to call plays. And then Kyler Murray, while calling plays, runs 2 touchdown drives, and Cliff Kingsbury, while calling plays, has a field goal. So it was
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was 14-3 as far as play calling goes, with Kyler Murray a resounding lead there calling plays. So that was really funny to see him calling plays out there.
And side note here, to kind of wrap it up, is this might make some fantasy owners throw up in their mouth a little bit, but Mike Davis might be relevant. I mean, we're not getting any positive news on Edwards for sure. Dobbins is still looming. It looks like Davis, he started this game. He might start week 1. And I know that didn't go well for people that drafted him last year at all.
That'll do it for today's Peacock and Williamson. If we did not get to your team on today's week 2 preseason wrap, hit us up on Twitter at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL, and give us a question about your squad. We'll get into all of it. We
skipped some on purpose, folks. So we got a little bit of a time crunch here.
Yeah. We don't have time to get into every preseason game, especially when it's the preseason. So that is today's program. Matt and I back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.